Well, hello, sir. I'm on too. Good to see you. How's everybody doing?
We're hanging in, man. End of the year, baseball stuff, graduations. It's just crazy.
Well, we are in VBS mode coming up next week, so just taking it easy. I think I got hay on me. We're doing the Answers in Genesis theme this year. Try to do something different. You know, it's crazy how many churches don't use, no, how many churches use Lifeway? I've seen non-denoms use it, Lutherans use it. Like everybody's doing the Lifeway VBS out here. And so it's like, why don't we try something different? Because as you ask families, they're like, well, we did that one. So we
Yeah,
tried something different. Not that I'm like a diehard Answers in Genesis person. I mean, I like them,
you
but
should be. You
not
should be.
die hard. And but I really do like what I've seen from this one. But it's a Western theme, so we had some hay, and so I was hauling up before I got here today. So it's humid out, man. This is something. It's different, but I still, it's the humidity is nothing compared to like 110 in Phoenix. So there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. It's a dry heat. We're getting up there, but no humidity in sight. So
No,
that's fun. We're doing the Lifeway BBS at my church next week. So that'll be good.
magnified.
Yeah. So we did Answers in Genesis a couple years ago. It was a good one. So
Yeah.
yeah, just try to mix it up.
Yeah, try. I'd be interested in trying other ones too. And
Oh, I think I lost you.
is that better?
I'm hearing you
Can you hear
again.
me
Yeah,
now? Look at
I
that.
can
You
hear
know
you.
what it is? This
What's
thing,
that?
this microphone. So I got to put this like this so I can see the red. The red will say it's not where this microphone has like this little button here, and I touched it with my nose, and then it was off. So whatever microphone I got, the Solo Cast. It's a design
Hands.
flaw.
It is hands free. Hands free.
It's true. It's true. Well, hey man, so we thought we would do a little bit of our VBS or not VBS, our SBC talk. Uh got a busy time coming in about week and a half. Actually about what? No, it'll already be over in 2 weeks. And so so less than 2 weeks we're gonna be in Dallas. And we need to talk about what to expect. I know that many of our church members at least watch our stuff. And yeah, what do we expect to have happen to have a conversation about?
Well, yeah, I'm pumped. We got a few things, an article to react to. I think it's going to be a calmer year, but you just never know. There's obviously some issues that are worth looking at, kind of similar things that have been going for the last several years.
Yeah,
You want to go ahead and pray, and we'll jump in.
let's do it.
All right, please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
All
All
right.
right. So you mentioned an article that we're going to look at. Article that we're looking at that you and I both had a chance to kind of review recently. Came from a group called Center for Baptist Leadership. They posted an article called "The Three Necessary Debates for Real Unity in the SBC." So we just kind of wanted to look through those, see what they were saying that they anticipate. I always, when we get up to these meetings, I always like to kind of read like what are people thinking. Some of these guys generally either have their finger on the pulse or it's because they're going to be the ones to bring it up, right? And so that's kind of what I like knowing about like what do we anticipate some of the stuff going to be talked about? And it could be that these are nothing. Could be that these are just big deals to them. It could be that it doesn't go anywhere to the floor. I mean, if you know anything about how Baptist polity or at least a Baptist convention works, anybody can bring anything to the floor, and it's up for the members, to the people who are the
Messengers. Yeah.
messengers, yeah, um, to really say whether we want to do it or not. So uh, let's talk about it. You want to talk about them?
Yeah, yeah. I think if you've been following us for a while, we would tend to do this kind of before and after the SBC uh, kind of review and what to expect. Yeah, it's been kind of a contentious time last several years, I think, for the SBC. And, this year I think it's a little bit calmer, but should it be? That's the question.
Yeah.
So just reviewing, a couple years ago when Saddleback Church was removed for having ordained women elders and then hiring a couple to be co-pastors. That was kind of this big thing. It made all the national news. And that sparked the law amendment, which we'll get to, I guess, again,
Yeah.
which ended up failing on its second vote last year. And that was a vote to try to bring clarity to what we mean by the word pastor, elder, or bishop in our languages at our churches. There's talk about bringing that back again. Our Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, we're looking at that. And then so there's the three issues. So I thought we'd just kind of go through these and then financial transparency of our organizations. So I agree. I think these are three big issues that we need to continue to keep pressing on, even if it doesn't resolve maybe through a constitutional amendment. But we do need to keep, I think, the pressure on sorting out a conclusion because there are issues going on that if we kind of sit back, and I'm afraid this year everyone is going to be sitting back a little bit because we elected a little bit more of a conservative president that, especially when it comes to the law amendment, he was in favor of that. I think there's a general movement right now of we've got good people in charge. We should trust those people, and we don't need to rock the boat too much anymore.
I think,
And that's just kind of I think the sense of things, and
yeah.
that might be good, that might not be good
So
because we might need to keep
l-
pressing.
let me say what I've been thinking about too, though, is so last year, I think some of the things that didn't happen, I think some of that was Dr. Orge was new. Coming in, and I think people were kind of wanting to say, look, we want to give him the benefit of the doubt. We've had this kind of like chaotic time with not having somebody really at the helm there, especially kind of what had happened in the interim. And so I think when he came out, I think people were willing to say, well, look, let's not I think people were going to say, let's not tie his hands, let's not do anything yet. And I think he was asking for some of that too, like let's let the process play out. And so I think one thing that might be interesting to watch is, okay, it's been a year. Do people are people going to have the same charity towards him now? That it's now that he's had a kind of a year to kind of be around to see. I mean, look, let's face it, he's not though I don't know how it works. I'd be interested to ask him sometime. But he's it's not like he's a newbie to this. He's been at when he was at Golden Gate and now Gateway for years and years and years. It's not like he was not
Yeah.
aware of how everything was played out. But that being said, once you're in that new role, I think it's a whole different ball game. But I do think there was a lot of that last year, and I do wonder will people still say, hey, we've given you some time. We're waiting. We're trying to, like we're letting you kind of work this process out and make some changes as
Yeah.
much as you can affect it from your end. I don't know.
Yeah, I think some really good things that now I do think people are frustrated because really the sexual abuse task force, the whole way that we handled that, the idea that there'd be churches being sheltered or pastors being sheltered from the authorities just spun up the convention several years ago, and I think our reaction was co-opted, and I'm with the group that thinks that there was a lot going on here that wasn't really what the messengers were hoping for. And at the end of this massive report, we found that really uh, our churches, for the most part, were doing we're doing well. That it's never 100% uh, perfect compliance on everything, but all the accusations of hiding and sheltering and all of this of abusers really came to nothing. There has been issues, and we need to know how to handle that. And part of the issue going on, I think, with that whole situation was our broken levels of authority. It's not like you call the SBC and the SBC on high governs how all that is handled. And so we've been working through how should we handle that going forward. Some good things came out of it. I think the big win last year was that the task force finished its work and it essentially folded into the executive committee because there was an effort to try to create a standing body that would be independent of the SBC of entities, and ERLC was trying to fund that. They put money aside, and had that continued, I think you would have created really a monster that would not have been able to be reeled in by the messengers. It would have almost been a super entity that would need all these special circumstances to try to move it. So I'm really excited. I think Dr. Orge did a good job in finding a way forward with that and essentially establishing, I think, personnel on the executive committee to handle crises. And we got that report that came out about how many people had called the line and how little it was being used and all of these things that we put a lot of money into. I think for Dr. Orge, right now, his big challenge is they're settling all these lawsuits that came out of that. And people are really disappointed in the fact that we're using basically funds that are going into the cooperative program that
Yeah.
was designed for missions, and those funds are necessarily either being used directly or indirectly to settle these lawsuits for the
Yeah.
way that things were handled. And I think if he survives that one, which I'm sure he will, but I think they're selling assets, they're doing different things to clear all this out. It was really maybe exposed a major weakness in our polity, the way this was handled. But nevertheless, when that is all settled, I think he's really got room to operate on. But the settling that's also taking place is churches that aren't happy with all of the process over the last 5 years have been exiting the convention. Others have been entering. And once the waters settle, I think things will really go well for the SBC. But all of these things are kind of interlocked in some sense because a lot of this goes back to the cultural pushes of DEI, the Me Too movement. All of that kind of was felt by our convention. And Dr. Orge is just doing an excellent job of navigating it. I think he needs a little more time because some of this stuff needs to have multiple years to work through. But I'm with you. I think people's attention spans are short, and if we don't get things resolved quickly, they start getting a little frustrated. But that's just kind of it's a little bit of a tangent there, but
Yeah.
not entirely. Getting context for those that are not familiar with what's been going on.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I think that, I mean, in terms of what's been happening currently, what Orge is having to wade through, um, a lot of that stuff was already all at play before he had gotten there. That was, and so, he's limited in what he can do because that's all stuff that's been set into motion and stuff you got to sift through. So hard on him that he's inherited that he's got to work on. But as we go through some of the stuff that we need to talk about, some of the things that at least this article anticipates. And outside
Yeah.
of that, I really don't know. As I've been thinking about, at least in the Twitter sphere, as you begin to kind of listen to what people are saying or what needs to get, I would say that this kind of sums up at least what I have seen people kind of drumming up and talking about. Um, and so, yeah, you want to kind of talk through the kind of three major points that
Yeah.
they think. Let's start
And
with
and
the
I
first.
will say my favorite thing about this article is that the sexual abuse stuff isn't listed. That's been such a contentious issue. And so one of the things that's really nice about this coming year is we're not carrying this over our shoulders. We spent a fortune investigating ourselves with no requirement. We actually motivated the FBI to investigate us. We were found clear by the FBI. They dropped their investigation after all that was said and done. Basically, we're on the backside, and we got a little, I think, overzealous on this, at least some of the folks. And now we're settling lawsuits that are related to allegations. But that's all settling. And what's really wonderful is that that's not the issue we're talking about today. I mean, I think that makes it an issue is that we are stepping out of that crisis. Also, I do think we came out with some good resources for churches to handle things going forward. So it wasn't like the whole thing was not worth the time. But I think we could have done it for a lot less money.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the first big thing is Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. The Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the ERLC, they are supposed to be kind of our lobbying body to help express Baptist views to Congress and to political authorities to help advance the causes that Baptists care about. And last year, there was a motion made to dissolve it, right? Not just to dissolve it, also to defund it, because strategically, you need 2 consecutive years of votes to dissolve an entity, but you can defund an entity on the budget. And so this was part of the gamesmanship that was going on. And basically, the motion to abolish got 35 to 40% of the vote last year. That is a tremendous vote. And even though it failed, that should have made people in the ERLC a little bit nervous. However, for those that are kind of on the side that wanted to see it come to an end, they didn't really feel like the ERLC responded with, we better, start addressing things that Baptists care about a little bit more vigorously. Because the truth is, I think the leadership flows from Russell Moore down to Brent Leatherwood, and that whole entity really is probably a little bit more liberal than most Southern Baptists in the pew and most pastors in the pulpit. That would be my take on it.
Hmm.
Uh, so the question is, should we get rid of it? I mean, that's
Yeah.
why should we keep it, Dr. Pate, Mr.
Yeah.
Ben?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I've always felt like with some of it that when you wade into policy stuff, there are some good things you can do with it. There's also some stuff that you can wade into that would can have a reflect poorly, because like it or not, it's very much. I mean, if you try to think about like what's probably the most, I don't know, like it's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's out there, and it will. I mean, I remember there are times like they've been involved with like this was back in the Bush days of like with illegal immigration and amnesty and stuff like that. And there are people saying, what are we involved with this stuff? Like, why? And granted, as you and I have done in other videos before, if you can blow the cause up of pro-life to be everything and anything at this stage. Um, but I will say, I think some of the stuff that's going to come, as I was reading the article, I was reminded of kind of the weird thing that happened last year, right? It was the what happened with the firing, and then the bringing back on and getting rid of the chairman. I mean, that's an interesting question that people got to do. I think the other thing is, Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale,
Yeah.
that came out right when the convention was coming out. And so it really wasn't a lot of time to digest that. But I do think that there's going to be some questions about the relationship between ERLC and some of these, I don't know, just some of the more liberal groups that have tried to funnel money into, and like and maybe, and I'm just gonna say, even from a positive side of like, if you're gonna keep to ERLC, of how do we protect our ERLC from being co-opted? How do we protect it from the very fact that they did say that that's a prize of how do they take it and change it and use it for their own purposes to support more liberal causes than what we should be focused on. So to me, I think there's legitimate, like it makes sense. That's going to come right back up because there has been some weird things that have happened over the last year that just say we need some clarity on that. And Baptists, they if we're curious, it's going to come. It's going to happen. We're going to ask the question. It's going to come to the floor for sure.
Yeah, and the fact that it's kind of a reoccurring thing, and it's like you said, it's kind of been a hot button issue over time. The hard thing is that Baptists have a very broad uh, viewpoint across all of our churches, and can you really consolidate that down to a body that can speak for Baptist everywhere? And then things that you would have thought. I remember even when Roe v. Wade was overturned, you had folks that seemed to be kind of like, well, don't spike the football, don't get too excited about this
Yeah.
multi-generational battle, and it was just very strange. But it kind of let you know that, hey, this ERLC, it just the tone, it didn't seem like it was representing most of us, and then of course the issue of immigration being a very heated topic. The majority of uh, I think Southern Baptists kind of have a conservative view on immigration. It's not that we don't love people, but the ERLC seem to be representing a little bit more of a liberal bent on those policies. And those are the kind of things that I think Megan Basham's book really shows that there are powerful entities trying to buy that mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And is it should we have such a mouthpiece at all? There's so many other kind of non-sponsor groups. It's almost kind of I almost look at it like the PBS debate, right? Is Trump's going to shut down NPR and PBS because do we need to pay for that viewpoint out of taxpayer dollars?
Yeah.
Uh, there's so many other groups that are lobbying causes within the Southern Baptist body that aren't receiving funding from the messengers? And would it just be a better thing to say, hey, we will speak as a voice through resolutions at our convention meetings, but in terms of having the approved lobby, maybe it would be better to diversify that so that if somebody tries to co-opt it, it's
Yeah,
harder to get, right?
that's true. I
So
mean, yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's tough for sure because it has the ability to look like it speaks for all Baptists all the time. And it has it anyways. There's not much more you can say. It's clear that that's coming, and I think that one you don't even have to look at this article. I mean, this one that I think you talk to people, it's going to
yeah.
be back up. It'll happen for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm in a position where I don't see the value of it. I think generally we have abolitionists in the pro-life world, and ERLC has not worked in line with them. They're on the pro-life side, so they're not as conservative about those issues. They actually lobbied against bills that would have completely ended abortion in states because they are politically calculating that, hey, that would be maybe an overreach and that could hurt us in X battle. You just get into all the politics of it, and it just gets distasteful. I just think at this point in time, because there's so much media and so many powerful entities that are already parachurch or made of Baptists, do we really need the
That's what I was
ERLC
going to just
today
ask. Yeah, I was
like
going
we
to ask the
did?
same thing.
Yeah,
Do
because in
yeah,
the
does
80s,
Yeah, in the
you
new
didn't have,
media today, when
yeah,
I can get a hold of a politician truly through something like X, and there is a shot. I mean, you can look at just the way the needle moves in in politics right now. There are
yeah,
enough people that get on and say, "Hey, look, we need to talk about this." It'll move the needle. So there is that piece of like, okay, has it had its time? And I'd be interested to know. I think it'd be helpful to say what is the current value that they give that I can't get.
right.
And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm actually just I'm curious because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that of what is the current value that they offer that we can't do right now. If it's just relationships, then I don't know. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard for me to see what the value really is. And I know that they try to push some things, but it always kind of seems like they'll throw some sort of abortion thing out there, like, look what we're doing and everybody love us. But then you look at the other things and you're just, the tenor and the tone that comes out of the ERLC, for me is a little disappointing. Even on issues just for my local church of trying to work through policy, I don't find their articles to be that engaging or that helpful. It's almost becoming like the Baptist Christianity today,
yeah,
which, oh my goodness, we already have Christianity today. It's not Southern Baptist. It's just kind of gone off on a leftward bent. And I think most people look at Brent Leatherwood and say, you're just not convincing us that you're in agreement with the most of us. And so it's hard to kill an entity that already exists. But I would say that I think it served its purpose. And in the new media, you can, like you said, we can all blow up our congressmen's boards. We could use a resolution that was passed, and 10 entities could go out
yeah.
that would be funded by churches directly. Do we need the ERLC anymore?
It's a good
I don't think
question.
so. So, yeah. Oh, also, one of the questions Sam Webb raised: why did the ERLC earmark $250,000 for the ARITF nonprofit that wasn't? The ERLC was going to use its own budget money to create that sideline entity for the abuse task force that they were really pushing hard for, which, again, a lot of us that were kind of saying, hey, this isn't going in the right direction, this isn't necessary. They were kind of bullying that, like, we'll take the price tag off of it. Well, that money was earmarked for them to do their job, so why are they doing that kind of thing? And then the
Yeah,
question too is, are they really answerable to us? If we dissolve the ELRC, would the whole thing just stand up tomorrow under funding from various other groups that are outside the SBC that they're already kind of buddied up with? And that's kind of where Meg Basham's book, I think, is really helpful in exposing the relationships. And they're not that worried about SBC funding because I don't think they really need it. I think the entity would just kind of stand itself up as its own nonprofit and have funding that would be coming from various groups. I could be wrong on that, but yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's kind of how I view it. Maybe we should move on, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it explains a lot too. All right, the next one is the law amendment. And I mean, if you follow this, we've talked about this enough. I mean, this was the amendment that was to go and amend our Constitution, which was that it was going to be that we would not hire a female pastor of any kind. Essentially, just trying to clarify in our Baptist Faith and Message, it's already clear that we're complementarian in terms of the pastorate, that the pastorate is reserved for men only. What this was trying to do was to say, at least the way I understood it. Now, I have other guys who I know and trust who have not been thrilled with the wording of this because they've argued that this was a possible Trojan horse to go extreme right on one side. I'm not quite sure. My understanding was this was to just bring clarity to the title of pastor, to really try to help the credentials committee and everybody else recognize that pastor title should be reserved for men only. And so pastor of any kind was going to make it to where, if you've got a female pastor, you're not cut. You can get that figured out, change, make sure you do what you need to do to become more aligned with what our bylaws say. But it took two votes on that. First one passed in 2023, and then we had to have a two-thirds majority last year, which we didn't. I think we were like 2 points shy of a
It was
two-thirds
close.
majority. It was
Yeah.
super close, but I also think that also came. There were a lot of heavy hitters that came out against that one, and I do think that the fact that there was an appeal made to, hey, like let's give Dr. Orge time to figure this out. Let's not do anything drastic. That happened. Now, here's one of the reasons why people are saying it's coming back. Well, first off, we all kind of felt like it was probably going to make a comeback again because it's just not been settled. It does not feel like it's really truly been dealt with. I think the fact that we're just very big umbrella, kind of a convention has made it to where it is forcing the question. But there have been some things that have happened since the meeting as well, that have that have made people wonder: does the credentials committee actually have what it takes, or are they going to need this? Right? Are they do they really need something like this to help them make it black and white for how to deal with churches? And so, yeah, I've seen a couple things that are on the internet. I remember one of them actually. I'm trying to remember what it was specifically, but there was one church that had a female teaching pastor that even
Yeah.
our new president of the convention, he actually found that and threw it out to the credentials committee. Said, "Hey, how did we miss this?" So there's some questions of like, do we really need to create a stronger standard so that it's not up to that the committee's hands become tied in the sense of this is what it says, and it's not, just this kind of, we're gonna kind of dance around what we think it should all mean. So I think that's where some of these guys are saying it's time to really just finish this off and pass
Yeah.
this thing. So that is my understanding, is that it's going to come back again in some form this year.
Yeah, it's so Meredith Knox, teaching pastor of New Spring Church. Basically, they said, well, we looked at it and hey, they're in agreement with us. It's, well, wait a second, she's teaching men and women as a pastor. How is that in agreement? And that I think a lot of people took the failure of the vote last year to somehow endorse women associate pastors at every level. And of course, that was a really bad read on that. We talked about this last year. No, over 60% of Southern Baptists 2 years in a row said we want to constitutionally say you can't call someone pastor if they're a woman, because a qualification for pastor is being a man. It's one of the qualifications. It's not the only one. But yeah, the credentials committee then is tasked saying, hey, we already have the tools in our toolkit to address these issues. Well, they failed it. Yeah, Presley called them out on it, in front of the world. And I don't know if I ever saw the resolution. Did they even turn around and
I
revoke
thought
that
they did.
charge?
I thought they ended
Yeah.
up doing that with that kind of a pressure, but I can't remember about that.
But that's part of the issue is twofold. I've got Jeff Orge's article talking about heavy hitters that came against this, and they barely were able to stall it off.
Yeah.
And of course, they scheduled the vote for it right after they kicked out a church on these kind of grounds to say, hey, we've got the fortitude to handle this. We don't need a constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
And then, of course, within a year,
It,
we lost our fortitude.
and that's the thing is it was played it was really played up at the convention of trust our trust the process, that the
Right.
process works. And I do don't my sense is that for many we still just don't trust the process. And so I think that's
Yeah.
where people are like, listen, I appreciate, but there's been things to say. Maybe we just need to make the process a little more difficult and not just trust it completely.
Well, and it's also related to we just want churches that aren't in agreement with us to leave. Like not mean-spirited, not angry. We don't want churches who don't agree with us to change our convention. We want churches who don't agree with us to leave. And so if you make it clear in a constitutional sense that we will basically be clearing our rolls of churches that are violating this, most of the churches violating it will leave. And I think that was the huge fear is that we're already losing churches, we're losing members. We can't afford to lose. But for those of us that are kind of wanting to have doctrinal clarity and consistency, maybe the reason we're losing people is because people don't know what Baptists stand for anymore because we just are generic evangelicals and it doesn't. There's nothing we stand on. Whatever the culture does, we'll bend with it. But Jeff Orge in his article said four recommendations. Let us use our current processes to respond to churches. Well, we saw that fail this year. So at least we had a president who called it out, but without Clint Presley in place, we wouldn't have had it adjusted. I don't think. You have to have that bully pulpit. Let's keep debating the issues of gender leadership roles in churches with the goal of persuading churches to change their positions or practices rather than removing them from the SBC. I would love to see what we're doing there. It's been a year. Did we establish a commission or a task force
Yeah.
to investigate this to elevate the role of pastor to such a level that we have clarity? I didn't see anything happen.
Yeah.
Let's recommit to cooperation in pursuit of God's eternal mission. We are a diverse, messy collection of churches. That is true. Celebrate our diversity, and let's do that rather than striving for conformity. I think we're doing that. Let's focus our energy on external threats instead of internal battles. Global secularism and religious persecution are an increasing reality daily. Okay, so I think that it's that chewing bubblegum while walking kind of thing. Yeah, we do have external pressures, but part of the reason that we want to get clarity here is that one of those external pressures is demeaning the office of pastor and ignoring biblical standards that are in our confessional statement. So if we don't get that right, what are we standing for, against the pressures of the outside? So I would say that after a year, we haven't done anything really to educate or advance the causes of the confessional statement regarding pastors, elders. The office is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. Knowing that that is our confessional statement, uh, if the goal is not a constitutional amendment, then how are we going to do this? Because we still have the problem, right? And so I don't think the process is working. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is coming up again. I think I was in favor of it last year. I think I'm still in favor of it. I will say this: just because you change the rules does not mean that people will abide by the rules.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that we saw with the United Methodists is how in the world did the United Methodist Church move on all the rainbow issues so rapidly when it was always against their governing documents? Uh, none of these people ever should have been in a
Yeah.
position of leadership because they were forbidden to be there by their governing documents. What happened is they ignored their governing documents. So just by changing something in the Constitution, it does not guarantee that we would actually solve the problem. And I
Yeah.
think that is a weakness of the law amendment, is assuming if we put it in the Constitution, everything will be dandy. You do need to pressure the Credentials Committee to do its job with regard to this. And so either way, I just think folks on the Credentials Committee who thought that they had threaded the needle with this church need a little bit more of a rigid measure, I think, now, because they've proven that they just aren't reliable on this standard. So we need to have something that is going to help them with that, such as a law amendment or something like that. But we also need to keep the pressure on to say, okay, now do your job. And if we don't stay on top of these issues, then you'll just ignore the rules. And so we need to have good rules, but we also have to enforce the rules.
Yeah, you make a good point there. I mean, really, your rules only matter as long as somebody's enforcing it. You've got people with shared values. I mean, and that's honestly, that's the whole thing that everybody needs to be aware of. This is why churches need to be at these things, is
Yep.
because you vote and we vote for the guy who we think should be the president, who then will help play that role in putting people on the nominating committee and the nominating committee people with those instructions for how to put those in all these different teams. And so, yeah, I think it's key that that all of this is how this process, you need to be available and you need to be plugged in if you want to see change. And this is one of the reasons why I think you and I, we say we go to these things. I think you go for baseball though too, and making sure you hit up every field. I need a cool hobby like that. Um, but that we go because we don't want to just be people who say, here's my thoughts. Like we're trying to be there to try to understand what's going on, try to show up and at least um, make a change if we can, right? If we can be part of the change, it's part of the what needs to be done, and then report back to our church people because our people will read these articles and say, "Well, what's really going on?" Or I heard them say this. I mean, I had a lot of questions last year, even questions on the big IVF thing. There was the whatever story came out in the big media there. Then we had to explain. No, here's what was there. I was there. This is what this is all about. This is what this meant. And so I think it's important. Be there, show up, play a role,
Yeah.
so that you can enact some of that change too. All right, man. Last one before we roll off here. The last one that they bring up is what?
The 990 level financial transparency. So most nonprofits have to file a 990 form with the government about how their money has been spent. The SBC does not have to do that. I think it's a religious exemption or something along those lines. And so someone said, you know what, that would be really helpful information to have because the messengers really are in the dark about how money is being spent at some very large entities such as NAM. And now people were posting the car of NAM's
I remember
booth,
that one.
and you go up to it and it looked like it was you could take a picture of it and make it look like, wow, we bought an Indy race car and spent all this money. It was a facade. It was nothing to be worried about. But that's, you have to always see two sides of this because you have crazy people on both sides. But NAM, part of the question is you run the money. You're like, okay, this is a large budget. How many churches are we planting? Where's all this money going? How's it being
Yeah.
broken down? Who makes what? How much money does an entity leader make, and is that appropriate? So someone a few years back came out with the idea of let's just require the entities to file a form like this, not to the government, but similar information of how the money's being spent, what the salary levels are, so that a messenger would have access to that, because we feel like we're not getting the accountability that we would like to see with these entities. And so that did not pass last year, but that one seems to be making a comeback because there is concern that these entities are not using the money as wisely as some messengers would like them to be using it. Um, so well, I don't know. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean that's the hard thing of like how much information does the average messenger need, right? I don't know. I mean, that's where the argument last year was right that like they're accountable. Each of these entities are accountable to the trustees, right?
Yeah.
Do the trustees have access to all this information? Are they able to see this all? And then the big question is, well, I mean, I feel like a big theme can sometimes be a lack of trust. I think it's not only. I also think what happens in our convention sometimes is also what you see playing out in just entities across the board in the world. There's a lack of trust for entities for leadership. Um, and so is it sufficient to say that trustees would have the information? Do you really need every messenger to be able to have it, have access to it? That kind of thing. Like I look at like our church, right? And where really we don't publish everything, but any church member who wants it can have it, right? Like you have access, but you're going to have to come to us and ask for it because we don't want, generally, my always thoughts is I just don't want it like what I see with church people doing most of the time after a business meeting is it like ends up in like just sitting in the chair or people leave it out in the parking lot. They put it on top of their car. They're about to get in, then they drive off, and then all that like information, detailed information's out in the parking lot. And so I've always been one of like, hey, like if you really want it, we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
But come to us and we'll get it. But there are limits too. Like I remember, being at a certain church where I served at before, and hearing the stories of certain people that got on a finance team, and every single receipt was analyzed, and they were saying things like, oh, they eat at this restaurant. I've never even been taken to a restaurant like that. It was like there was some steakhouse or whatnot. It was like just because you guys don't go out doesn't mean, but like,
Yeah.
you want to, does that open Pandora's box? That's the question
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that. I
And
understand, at the top, you want to know, does our process allow for it? Right. Does it open Pandora? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm curious to hear more.
yeah, yeah, I'm torn on this one because we have trustees. At the same time, I've heard that if you're a trustee at one of these large entities, you don't have access to this information unless you're on the trustee group that is handling finance. And so, really, it's a small number even of the trustees that get all this information in some cases. And so, the key is making sure that you've got the right people on the group that handles the money within the entity, and everybody else. You just don't need to know kind of thing. And so. And then as a trustee, it's a long-standing practice that you wine and dine your trustees, you treat them really well. They look at it as kind of a prestigious calling rather than a calling to keep an entity accountable. A lot of times you don't know the ins and outs of how it all works, and so you trust the administration. And so that's how you lose a lot of these entities over time, is that the trustees essentially get co-opted to just trust what they're given. And so there's been talk about training that's not handled by the entity, but training that would be provided by a third party or something through the executive committee that would explain better what the task of the trustees are so that they could hold these groups accountable. Um, but financial transparency would be a very large accountability mark. And you'd have some Baptists that have nothing to do on their time, but to analyze every receipt.
Yeah.
So it would be now it's not that detailed though. The 990 form is still very summarizing
Yeah.
summary statements, but it would give us a little bit more information. And so those that are for it are saying, hey, it's not that severe. In fact, everybody has to do this. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah.
So I think that it goes both ways on this one. One thing I wonder is, maybe it's not annual. Maybe what we could do is wire something in that there's going to be every 5 years some sort of larger release of data. I work for a higher education, and so every 5 to 10 years we are in what's the word I'm looking for? Accreditation, certification. And so we have it's a 10-year thing, but every 5 years you kind of have a halfway point. And you get auditors come in and you have all this work that's done, and you got to make sure that you're following your own rules. I think maybe that could be something we could look at where every year, not everybody's getting access to every dime, but maybe we could do something better than what we're currently doing. And I don't know what it would be. When they say trusted trustees, I'm sympathetic to that argument. At the same time, I I just know that a lot of trustees don't really know what they're doing. They're there for a period of time. It's a nice thing to be part of. It's not that they're not trying to do a good job. Most of them have full-time jobs. And I, you remember being at the seminary. It's like trustees are coming. Everybody on your best behavior,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Everything's going to look clean. Everything's going to look really well taken care of because the trustees are coming, and we got to make sure that they think this thing is run smooth. And most of the time, we wanted them to think it looked smooth because we were pretty happy. But those are the kind of things that you just recognize. I'm not sure trusted trustees is the all in all. I don't know. I haven't studied the 990 form enough to recognize it. And some people are like, well, we don't want to send it to the government. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying a level of transparency that's greater than what we have. And I'm not opposed to that, but I think the devil's in the details on this, and because of that, it will not pass.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Well, I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to hear. Like I said, I think those are the ones that they just haven't been they haven't they haven't been let up yet. And I think that's a good summary. Like I said, I don't know if there's anything else that's going to be brought up. There will obviously be things brought up. Most of it, these are the big ones, I think, that are coming. But like I said, the temperature I don't feel is as hot right now as it was going in. So that'll be a curious thing to see. Is it's just not as tense as it was going. You knew we were going into some kind of a bigger battle as we headed into 2024 for the convention. So I don't know. I think we'll see. I'll be interested to do our
Yeah.
post convention OTXNT to talk through it.
Yeah, I think the general American population is calming down a little bit with the changeover politics there. It feeds into everything else. Clint Presley seems to be Barber, I think, was an improvement for those on the right for what came before. I think Clint Presley's a vast improvement from going back to the Greer era if you're on that side of the aisle. So you're just calm. And that side of the aisle is pushing these issues, by the way. That's
Yeah.
why I bring it up. And so the real crucial piece to this is why it is so important to elect a conservative Bible believing president. That because everything trickles down. And I think right now the other thing that's why this is not as important is that Clint Presley gets another 1 year term. He'll probably just be reelected. There's no major opposition to him, which also brings the temperature of the convention down because nobody's really worried that they'll have a that he'll lose the presidency. He hasn't done anything to cause that to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't
um,
see anything like that. It
so
happened 2 years, about what? 3 years ago. That was one though. He only got
yeah,
one. Yeah.
with Ed Litton, and of course that
He
was
stepped out because
yeah,
he knew the writing was on the wall there.
and that was sad because it was that whole Sermongate thing
Yeah.
with plagiarizing sermons, which
And that was too much controversy to
yeah,
stay in. And so he stepped
yeah,
out to not be a further distraction to anything.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's and I think going back in the history, I think Adrian Rogers did 1 year and then
Huh.
stopped, and then he came back and won his second year later. It was actually one of the real political maneuvers during the resurgency. Just for those historians out there.
There you
Uh,
go.
all right. Well, that's all we got. I think it should be fun.
That's it, man. That is all I've got. I got to run and do a couple things coming up, but man, I'm glad we could put another one in here and let people have a chance to hear what's going on as we go out in just a couple weeks.
All right. You want to
All
close this
right.
out?
Well, y'all ready to close out with the priestly blessing?
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's do it. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you later. We'll do another one of these in a couple weeks after this is over and see if we were right, see if these guys were right, and see what the new, I don't know, where we're at. I'm tired, man. I'm gonna go back to
You're,
got a
you're in pre-VBS planning. Wait till next week. You're gonna be really
you're
tired.
right. I'm already tired and it's almost VBS. So
Yeah.
see you
Well,
soon enough, man. Looking
all
forward to
right.
it.
God bless. Take care, everybody. Like,
Bye bye.
share, send us money. All right.